Have you ever wondered what would happen if you changed just a little every single day? Not a big transformation, not a dramatic decision, not a moment where everything suddenly becomes different. Just 1%, one small, almost invisible improvement. Would it matter? Would anyone notice? Would you? 1 year ago, my life did not look broken from the outside. I had a stable routine. I woke up at the same time every morning. I went to work. I came home. I ate dinner. I scrolled on my phone. I slept. Nothing dramatic, nothing terrible. But inside, something felt heavy. It was not sadness exactly. It was not anger. It was not even disappointment. It was a quiet feeling that I was not growing. I was surviving, I was functioning, but I was not moving forward. Sometimes we think change must be loud. We imagine quitting jobs, moving cities, ending relationships, starting businesses. We think transformation must look impressive. But what if the real problem is not that we are doing the wrong things? What if the problem is that we are doing nothing new at all? The idea of improving just 1% did not come from motivation. It came from exhaustion. I was tired of promising myself big changes and breaking those promises. I was tired of writing long to-do lists that made me feel productive but changed nothing. I was tired of waiting for the right time. So I asked myself a different question. What is the smallest possible improvement I can make today? Not tomorrow, not next month. Today. The first day was almost embarrassing. I decided to wake up 10 minutes earlier, not 1 hour earlier, not a 5 a.m. A miracle morning. Just 10 minutes. When the alarm rang, I wanted to press snooze. 10 minutes does not matter, my mind said. But I got up anyway. I sat on the edge of my bed. I stretched. I took 3 slow breaths. That was it. No dramatic journal entry, no cold shower, no intense workout. Just 10 quiet minutes that belonged only to me. 1%. The second day, I did it again. The third day, I added something small. I drank a glass of water before coffee. That was my improvement. It felt too simple to count, but I counted it because the goal was not to impress anyone. The goal was consistency. After 1 week, nothing looked different from the outside. I was still the same person. I still had the same job, the same responsibilities, the same problems. But something inside felt slightly stronger. I had kept a promise to myself for 7 days, 7 small promises, 7 tiny improvements. It was not exciting, but it was real. During the second week, I added 5 minutes of reading before bed. 5 minutes only. Sometimes I read just 2 pages. Sometimes I read the same paragraph twice because I was tired. But I showed up. Every night. 5 minutes. 1%. What surprised me was not the knowledge I gained. It was the identity that slowly changed. I began to see myself as someone who follows through, someone who does not wait for motivation, someone who does small things even when they feel insignificant. That shift was quiet, but powerful. Around the third week, I noticed something unexpected. I started making better decisions automatically, not perfectly, but naturally. When I reached for my phone in the morning, I paused. When I wanted to complain, I stopped myself. When I felt tired after work, I still took a short walk. Not a long walk, not a gym session, just 10 minutes outside, fresh air, movement. 1%. There were days when I wanted to quit, days when work was stressful, days when I felt emotionally drained. On those days, my improvement was even smaller. Sometimes it was simply choosing not to react angrily. Sometimes it was going to bed 15 minutes earlier. Sometimes it was writing one honest sentence in a notebook. Today was hard, but I showed up. One sentence, 1%. After 1 month, nothing dramatic had happened. No promotion, no huge weight loss, no public success. But something important had changed. I trusted myself more. That trust felt unfamiliar. For years, I had made big plans and abandoned them. Now I was building evidence, small evidence, daily evidence, proof that I could change, even if the change was slow. Have you ever noticed how quickly we underestimate small actions? We ignore them because they do not feel impressive. We forget that consistency multiplies. 1% today, 1% tomorrow, 1% the next day. It compounds quietly. In the second month, I became more intentional. I asked myself each morning, where can I improve by just 1% today? Some days it was communication. I listened without interrupting. Some days it was health. I replaced one unhealthy snack. Some days it was mindset. I caught one negative thought and reframed it. Just one. Not all of them. Just one. There is something calming about small goals. They remove fear. They remove pressure. They remove the voice that says, this is too much. Because 1% never feels too much. It feels possible, even on your worst day. By the third month, people began to notice something. Not a huge difference, but a subtle one. You seem calmer. You look more focused. You're more patient lately. I smiled when I heard those comments. They did not see the 10-minute mornings. They did not see the 5-minute readings. They did not see the small internal battles I won quietly. But those invisible efforts were shaping visible behavior. I realized something important. Big change is often uncomfortable because it challenges identity. Small change gently reshapes identity. It whispers instead of shouting. It builds instead of breaking. There were setbacks, of course. A week when I skipped my reading, a few mornings when I overslept, a stressful period when I reacted emotionally. In the past, those moments would have ended everything. I would have said, I failed, and I would have stopped completely. But this time, I asked a different question. What is my 1% today? Not yesterday, not last week. Today. And I started again, immediately. Without drama, without guilt. Just one small improvement. Around the fourth month, something deeper shifted. I no longer searched for quick results. I stopped measuring progress in big outcomes. Instead, I measured it in consistency. Did I show up today? Yes or no? That was enough. The beauty of 1% is that it teaches patience. It teaches humility. And it teaches discipline without harshness. It teaches you that progress does not need applause. It only needs repetition. I began applying this mindset to my work. Instead of trying to master everything at once, I improved one small skill at a time. One better email, one clearer presentation, one thoughtful question in a meeting. Tiny adjustments. Over time, those adjustments created confidence. Not loud confidence, quiet confidence. The kind that does not need validation. In relationships, I practiced 1% too. One more moment of attention, one less defensive response, one honest conversation I had been avoiding. Not everything changed instantly, but tension softened. Conversations became deeper. I became more present. The most surprising part was not external success, it was internal peace. When you improve just a little every day, you stop fighting yourself. You stop demanding perfection. You stop waiting for a future version of you to start living. You begin now. Small, imperfect, consistent. Halfway through the year, I looked back at the person I was 6 months earlier. The difference was not dramatic in photos, not dramatic on social media, but dramatic inside. My thoughts were clearer. My habits were stronger. My self respect was deeper. And here is something honest. There were still hard days, still doubts, still mistakes. Improving 1% did not remove challenges. It strengthened my ability to face them. That is a different kind of power, not the power of control, but the power of steady growth. Have you ever imagined who you could become if you simply refused to stay the same? Not by forcing transformation, but by choosing improvement, daily, small, intentional. As the months continued, the small actions stacked quietly. 10 minutes became 20, 5 pages became 10, short walks became light workouts, but none of it felt extreme because it grew naturally, gradually, like sunrise. 1 year sounds long, but when you break it into days, it becomes manageable. 365 opportunities, 365 small choices, 365 1% improvements. I did not become a different person overnight. I became a slightly better version of myself, over and over again. And that repetition changed everything. Slowly, silently, powerfully. By the time I entered the 6th month of improving just 1% every day, was something subtle but powerful had happened. The actions were still small. The mornings were still quiet. The improvements were still almost invisible to the outside world. But internally, I was no longer negotiating with myself. Before, every good habit felt like a debate. Should I wake up early? Should I read tonight? Should I take a walk? Now, there was less discussion, less drama. I simply did the small thing I had decided to do, and that quiet consistency began to change the way I saw time. I used to think in big blocks. This year will be different. Next month I'll start. Tomorrow I'll reset. But living 1% at a time forced me into the present. Today is what matters, not the fantasy of the future, not the regret of yesterday, just today, just this one small improvement. Around this time, and I made a new rule. If I ever felt overwhelmed, I would shrink the improvement, not expand it, shrink it. If reading 10 minutes felt heavy, I read 2. If walking outside felt like too much, I stood by an open window and breathed deeply for 3 minutes. If journaling felt exhausting, I wrote one sentence, never zero, always 1%. There is something powerful about refusing to hit zero. Zero breaks momentum. Zero resets identity. Zero whispers, you stopped. 1% whispers, you're still moving. At work, I began noticing opportunities I once ignored. Not big opportunities, small ones. I volunteered to learn one new software tool. I asked one extra question during meetings. I practiced explaining ideas more clearly, nothing impressive. But I was no longer passive. I was participating in my own growth, and participation changes posture. You sit straighter, you speak more steadily, you hesitate less. By month 7, something interesting happened. Fear began to lose its volume, not disappear, but soften. I realized that many of my fears were connected to large expectations. What if I fail? What if I can't maintain it? What if it doesn't work? But when the goal is 1%, failure feels smaller, manageable, even useful. I remember one specific evening. I had a long day, mentally drained, emotionally tired. The old version of me would have escaped into distraction, scrolling, complaining, avoiding. Instead, I asked myself gently, what is one small improvement I can make right now? The answer was simple. Clean the desk. Just the desk. 5 minutes. I cleared the papers, wiped the surface, organized 2 folders. It did not change my career, but it changed my energy. The space felt lighter, and so did I. This is something I did not expect. 1% improvements often create emotional clarity because action reduces mental noise. You stop thinking about what you should do, and you simply do a small part of it. By month 8, my routines felt natural. Waking up earlier no longer felt heroic. Reading before bed no longer required discipline. Walking after work felt like breathing. Habits that once demanded effort now required almost none. And that freed energy I could use elsewhere. So I asked myself a new question. If my habits are stable, where can I grow next? Again, not dramatically, just 1%. I began improving how I spoke to myself. This was harder than waking up early, harder than exercising, harder than reading, because self talk is automatic, invisible, fast. I noticed how often I said things like, "You're behind, you're not good enough, you should be further." Instead of trying to eliminate all negative thoughts, I changed just one sentence per day. If I caught myself saying, "I'm not good at this," I added, "Yet." Just that word. Yet. 1%. Small shift. Big impact over time. The word yet changed how I saw challenges, not as proof of limitation, but as evidence of growth in progress. I'm not confident yet. I'm not skilled yet. I'm not where I want to be yet. That single word softened frustration and built patience. Around month 9, relationships began reflecting my internal changes more clearly. I listened more carefully, not because I forced myself, but because I was less distracted by internal pressure. When you are not constantly judging yourself, you judge others less too. Conversations became calmer. Responses became slower. Reactions became gentler. I noticed I interrupted people less. I defended myself less. I tried to understand more. Again, not perfectly. Just 1% better than before. There was a moment that stays with me. A friend shared a personal struggle. In the past, I would have rushed to give advice, to fix, to solve. But this time, I simply listened. And after a long pause, he said, "Thanks for not trying to fix it." That sentence meant more than he knew. It showed me that my small internal improvements were becoming visible externally. By month 10, I began to see measurable changes, not dramatic ones, but undeniable ones. I was healthier, not extremely fit, but stronger. I was more focused at work, not perfect, but consistent. I was more patient in conversations, not flawless, but intentional. And most importantly, I trusted myself deeply. That trust was the true transformation. Trust is built through kept promises, and 1% improvements are promises you can keep. There were still difficult days, unexpected setbacks, moments of doubt, but they no longer erased progress, because progress was not fragile. It was layered, built daily, reinforced repeatedly. One evening, as the 10th month ended, I looked back at my journal. Short entries, tiny notes, simple reflections. Nothing dramatic, but page after page of consistency, evidence, and proof that small effort accumulates. Proof that identity can change quietly. Have you ever underestimated what 1 year can do? Not 1 year of extreme effort, not 1 year of pressure, 1 year of gentle consistency, 1 year of 1%, 365 small votes for the person you want to become. As month 11 began, I felt something new. Gratitude, not for achievements, but for the process, for the simplicity, for the permission to grow slowly. I no longer rushed towards some future version of success. I respected the present version of effort, and I realized something deeply comforting. Improving 1% every day is not about productivity. It is about alignment. Alignment between who you are and who you are becoming, small action by small action, day by day, without noise, without pressure, without drama, just steady movement forward. There is a strange moment that happens after the excitement fades. It is the moment when no one is clapping, no one is noticing, no one is asking how you are doing, and yet you still have to continue. By the third month of improving just 1% every day, I understood something clearly. The hardest part was not discipline, it was invisibility. When I first started, everything felt dramatic. I woke up earlier, I cleaned my room, I deleted social media from my phone. I wrote goals in a notebook with careful handwriting. It felt like a transformation. But transformation, I learned, is quiet after the first few weeks. No fireworks, no applause, just repetition. Wake up, drink water, stretch, read 2 pages, write 1 paragraph. Practice speaking English for 10 minutes, walk for 20 minutes, sleep before 11, repeat. At first, I kept checking for results. Was I more confident? Did I look different? Did people treat me differently? The honest answer was no. Most days looked exactly the same, and that is when doubt began to whisper. Is this even working? You are doing all this for nothing. Other people change faster. Comparison is loud. Consistency is quiet. I almost stopped. Not because it was difficult, but because it felt meaningless. 1% is so small. You cannot see 1% in the mirror. You cannot hear 1% in your voice. You cannot measure 1% in a single day. But something subtle was happening. I noticed it one evening while speaking to a colleague. Normally, I would avoid eye contact. I would end conversations quickly. I would worry for hours afterward about what I said. That evening felt different. I was calm, not confident in a dramatic way, just steady. I listened more. I spoke slower. I did not rush to impress. And when the conversation ended, I did not replay it in my head. That was new. It was small, but it was real. That was 1%. Improvement is rarely visible to others first. It becomes visible inside you, like a room that slowly becomes brighter as the sun rises. You do not notice the exact second it happens, but suddenly you realize you can see clearly. In month 4, I made a mistake. I tried to speed it up. I thought, if 1% works, maybe 5% will work faster. So I added more habits. I tried to wake up even earlier. I doubled my reading. I added intense workouts. I forced myself to network more. For 2 weeks, I felt productive. Then I felt exhausted. The system broke. I skipped one day, then 2, then a week. And something interesting happened. The old voice returned quickly. See, you always quit. You are not consistent. Nothing has changed. That voice had been quiet for months. It was waiting. But this time, I responded differently. Instead of giving up, I went back to 1%, not 5, not 10, 1. The simplicity saved me. I did not need motivation. I needed sustainability. There is a difference. Motivation is emotional. Sustainability is structural. Motivation depends on how you feel. Structure carries you when you feel nothing. So I reduced everything. 2 pages instead of 20, 10 push-ups instead of 50, 5 minutes of speaking practice instead of 30. The habit stayed alive. And that is when I learned the second lesson of 1%. Never break the chain. It does not matter how small the action is. It matters that the action continues. A broken chain is harder to repair than a weak one. Consistency builds identity. Every time I completed a tiny habit, I was casting a vote, not for success, for identity. I was voting to become someone who keeps promises, even small promises, especially small promises. Around month 6, something shifted again. Not outside, inside. I stopped asking, when will I see results? I started asking, who am I becoming? That question changes everything. Results are external. Becoming is internal. External results depend on many factors. Internal becoming depends only on repetition. I was becoming someone calmer, someone less reactive, someone who paused before speaking, someone who did not panic over small problems. That did not mean life became easier. In fact, life tested me. There was a financial setback, an unexpected expense that created stress. In the past, I would spiral, I would complain, I would blame. This time, I felt the stress, but I did not collapse under it. I sat down, I wrote the numbers, I made a simple plan, and then I returned to my daily 1%. That is the power of small improvement. It does not remove storms. It makes you steadier inside them. There is a calm strength that grows slowly, like a tree that thickens over years. You cannot see it growing every day, but one day you notice the trunk is stronger. By month 8, people started to notice small things. You seem different. You look more relaxed. Have you been working out? What are you doing lately? I smiled, because the answer felt almost too simple. Nothing dramatic, just 1%. But I did not explain everything, because I realized something important. Most people are not looking for small change. They are looking for dramatic reinvention. They want visible transformation. They want overnight results. They want a new life by next month. 1% is too boring for most people. It requires patience. It requires humility. It requires accepting that today will look similar to yesterday, and yet it works. There was one specific night I will never forget. I was sitting alone with my journal. I was reading my first entries from month 1. The handwriting looked tense. The words were filled with frustration. I feel behind. I don't trust myself. I don't know who I am becoming. When I read those lines, I felt compassion, not shame, compassion, because I could see the distance I had traveled, not in achievements, in emotional maturity. I was not perfect. I still procrastinated sometimes. I still doubted myself, but the intensity was lower. The recovery was faster. The self-criticism was softer. That is improvement too. Not eliminating weakness, reducing its power. By month 10, the habits felt normal, not impressive, just part of life. I no longer celebrated completing them. I simply did them. That is when identity solidifies, when effort becomes routine, when discipline becomes default. And here is the surprising part. The biggest change was not productivity. It was peace. I felt less rushed, less desperate, less afraid of the future, because I trusted the process. When you trust small daily improvement, you stop chasing shortcuts. You stop comparing timelines. You stop measuring yourself against other people's highlight reels. You focus on today, just today. Can I improve 1%? Can I keep one promise? Can I be slightly better than yesterday? That question simplified my life. It removed pressure. It removed perfectionism. It removed the need to prove anything. Around month 11, I realized something subtle. I no longer recognized the version of me who used to give up easily. That identity felt distant, like a character from an old story. And yet the external world looked almost the same. Same job, same apartment, same city. But I was different inside it. And when you change internally, The same environment feels new. There is a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can rely on yourself, not for big heroic actions, for small daily ones. 1% taught me patience. It taught me that growth is not loud. It taught me that becoming is more powerful than achieving. But there was still one final month left, one final test. Because improving 1% every day for a year is not about perfection. It is about persistence, and persistence is always tested before it is rewarded. What happened in the final week surprised me, not because something dramatic occurred, but because I finally understood what this entire year was really about. It was never about improvement. It was about identity. And identity, once changed, changes everything quietly. The final month did not arrive with celebration. There was no countdown, no dramatic music, no feeling of victory. In fact, the last few weeks felt ordinary, and that was the surprise. For almost a year, I had imagined that day 365 would feel powerful. I thought I would wake up different, stronger, wiser, transformed. But when the final month began, life looked the same. I still woke up early. I still drank water in silence. I still stretched beside the bed. I still read a few pages. I still wrote slowly in my journal. The habits were no longer something I did. They were simply how I lived, and that was the real transformation. One quiet morning, I asked myself a question. If no one ever notices this year of effort, was it still worth it? The answer came immediately. Yes, because the person who noticed was me. For most of my life, I depended on external validation. Compliments, recognition, approval, even small praise could change my mood for an entire day, and criticism could destroy it. But after almost 12 months of keeping small promises to myself, something shifted. My confidence was no longer connected to applause. It was connected to evidence. Evidence that I could show up. Evidence that I could continue. Evidence that I did not quit when things were boring. That kind of confidence is quiet. It does not need attention. It does not demand admiration. It simply stands steady. In the final weeks, I experienced something unexpected. Temptation, a strange desire to stop. Not because I was tired, but because I was close to finishing. It felt like running the last kilometer of a long race. Part of you wants to sprint, and part of you wants to slow down, and part of you wonders if it even matters anymore. 1% today, 1% tomorrow. After all this time, what difference does one more day make? That thought was dangerous, because the truth is simple. The last day matters just as much as the first. Consistency is not proven in the beginning. It is proven at the end. So I continued, even when it felt unnecessary, even when it felt repetitive, even when no one was watching, especially then. One evening during the final month, I sat alone without my phone. No music, no distraction, just silence. And I realized something powerful. My mind was calmer than it had ever been. Not empty, not perfect, but less chaotic. In the past, silence made me uncomfortable. I needed noise, videos, scrolling, constant stimulation. Now, silence felt safe. That change did not come from one big decision. It came from hundreds of small ones. Every time I chose to read instead of scroll, every time I chose to walk instead of complain, every time I chose to write instead of avoid. Small decisions reshape the nervous system. They retrain your reactions. They teach your mind that discomfort is not danger. During the final week, I reread my journal from the entire year, page after page, day after day. I noticed patterns. In the beginning, my writing was filled with urgency. I must change. I cannot stay like this. I am running out of time. There was pressure in every sentence. Later in the year, the tone softened. Today was steady. I felt more patient. I handled that conversation better. Less drama, more awareness. The language changed because I changed. 1% every day does something subtle. It reduces emotional extremes. You stop living in highs and lows. You start living in stability. And stability is underrated. We often chase excitement, but peace is more powerful. Around day 360, a friend asked me a simple question. What's the biggest thing you achieved this year? I paused. I thought about physical changes, improved health, better posture, more consistent sleep. I thought about work, more focus, better communication, more discipline. But none of those felt like the real answer. So I said something different. I learned to trust myself. He looked confused. So I explained. Before this year, I made promises I did not keep. I would start something and stop. I would feel motivated and then disappear. I did not trust my own words. When you do not trust yourself, everything feels unstable. Goals feel fragile, plans feel temporary, even dreams feel unrealistic. But after showing up every day for a year, even in tiny ways, that trust returned. And trust changes posture. It changes how you walk into a room. It changes how you speak. It changes how you handle rejection. Because even if something fails, you know you will continue. You know you will adjust. You know you will try again tomorrow. That certainty is powerful. On day 365, I did not celebrate loudly. I did not post about it. I did not announce it to the world. I woke up, I drank water, I stretched. I read 2 pages. I wrote 1 page. I walked outside. It felt like any other day. And that was the victory. Because the goal was never to finish a year. The goal was to become someone who lives this way. 1% every day is not a challenge, it is a lifestyle. But here's the truth I did not expect. After day 365, nothing magical happened. There was no sudden opportunity, no dramatic external reward, but something deeper had already happened long before that day. My standards changed. I no longer negotiated with laziness as easily. I no longer accepted excuses quickly. I no longer believed the story that I was not disciplined. Identity rewrites behavior, and behavior reinforces identity. It becomes a loop, a positive one. In the past, a bad day would become a bad week. A bad week would become a bad month. Now, a bad day is just a bad day. Because the system remains, the habits remain, the structure remains. 1% gives you a safety net, not to avoid falling, but to avoid staying down. If you ask me what truly changed after 1 year, I would say this. My life did not become perfect. It became intentional. I stopped waiting for motivation. I stopped waiting for the right mood. I stopped waiting for confidence before acting. Action came first. Confidence followed. That order matters. Most people wait to feel ready, but readiness is created through repetition, and repetition is built through small, manageable steps. 1% is small enough to avoid fear, small enough to avoid resistance, small enough to repeat daily. And when repeated daily, small becomes powerful. Looking back, the year was not dramatic. It was not cinematic. It was quiet, steady, almost invisible. But invisibility does not mean insignificance. Seeds grow underground before anyone sees them. Roots strengthen in darkness. The most important changes often happen where no one is looking. If you had met me at the beginning of that year and at the end, you might not see a dramatic difference immediately. But if you spoke to me for an hour, you would feel it. More patience, more clarity, less desperation, more presence. 1% every day reshaped how I experienced time. I stopped rushing the future. I stopped regretting the past. I focused on today, just today. And that focus simplified everything. Now, when I think about the year, I do not see 365 days. I see 365 decisions, tiny ones, unimpressive ones, quiet ones. And that is the point. Great change does not require grand gestures. It requires daily commitment. So, what happened to my life? It became stable. It became grounded. It became calmer. It became mine. And perhaps that is the most powerful outcome of all. Not a new house, not a new title, not a new identity created for others, but a stronger relationship with myself, 1% at a time. And the surprising truth is this: the year ended, but the practice did not. Because once you understand the power of small, consistent improvement, you cannot unlearn it. You do not need to improve dramatically. You only need to continue. And continuing quietly every day is more than enough. When the year officially ended, I expected to feel finished. Instead, I felt responsible. Responsible for the person I had become. Because once you prove to yourself that change is possible, you can no longer hide behind excuses. Before this year, I used to say things like, "That's just how I am." "I'm not disciplined." "I get distracted easily." "I'm not consistent." Those sentences felt safe. They protected me from responsibility. If something was part of my identity, then I did not have to change it. But 1% every day quietly destroyed those beliefs, not with motivation, not with inspiration, with evidence. Small evidence, daily evidence, and evidence is difficult to argue with. After a year, I could no longer say, "I am not consistent," because I had 365 days that said otherwise. That realization changed how I speak to myself. Language shapes identity. If you constantly repeat negative labels, your brain accepts them as facts. But when your actions contradict those labels, something shifts. You begin to rewrite the story. In the first months, improvement felt like effort. In the middle months, it felt like structure. In the final months, it felt like identity. And after the year ended, it felt like responsibility. Because now I understood something powerful. I am not a fixed person. I am a repeated action. Whatever I repeat, I become. That truth is both freeing and uncomfortable. Freeing because it means I can shape my future. Uncomfortable because it means I am responsible for my habits. There is no dramatic villain in my life. No external force controlling everything. Mostly, it is small daily choices. And that awareness changed how I approach problems. For example, when I feel stuck now, I no longer ask, "How do I completely change my life?" I ask, "What is the smallest action I can repeat daily?" When I feel low energy, I do not redesign my entire routine. I focus on sleeping slightly earlier. When I feel distracted, I do not delete everything dramatically. I simply reduce one trigger. When I feel insecure, I do not force confidence. I practice one small, courageous act, one conversation, one honest sentence, one boundary. This mindset makes change less intimidating because 1% does not scare the brain. It feels manageable. And what is manageable becomes repeatable. After finishing the year, something else surprised me. My definition of success changed. Before, success meant visible achievement, money, recognition, results. Now, success feels different. Success is alignment. It is doing what I said I would do. It is keeping promises. It is showing up when no one checks. There is a deep peace in self alignment. When your actions match your intentions, anxiety decreases because internal conflict decreases. Much of my stress in the past came from inconsistency. I would set goals and ignore them. I would say one thing and do another. That gap created guilt, and guilt quietly drains energy. But when the gap becomes smaller, energy returns, trust returns, clarity returns. After 1 year, I also realized something subtle about time. Most people overestimate what they can do in 1 week and underestimate what they can do in 1 year. 1 week feels urgent, 1 year feels distant. But distance is powerful. 365 small steps are not dramatic individually, but together they reshape direction, like adjusting a ship's course by 1 degree. At first, it looks insignificant. Months later, you arrive somewhere completely different. That is what happened to me. I did not jump into a new life. I slowly redirected the old one. The environment did not change overnight, but my response to it did. And response shapes experience. If you react differently, life feels different. Another powerful lesson appeared after the year ended. Improvement is not about intensity. It is about recovery speed. I still make mistakes. I still waste time sometimes. I still feel doubt. The difference is not perfection, it is recovery. Before, a mistake felt like proof of failure. Now it feels like data. Before, one missed habit felt like collapse. Now it feels like adjustment. 1% thinking removes drama, it removes extremes. It encourages gentle correction instead of harsh judgment. And that kindness matters because harsh self criticism often leads to quitting. Kind discipline leads to continuation. After the year ended, I kept most of the habits, but I also allowed flexibility because I understood something important. Rigidity breaks, adaptability sustains. 1% does not mean robotic repetition, it means continuous refinement. Some days, improvement looks like action. Other days, improvement looks like rest, but the intention remains. That is the difference. There was one final realization that changed everything. 1% every day is not about self optimization, it is about self respect. When you improve slightly each day, you send a message to yourself: I matter. My future matters. My time matters. And that message builds confidence from the inside, not from comparison, not from competition, but from care. Care is powerful. When you care about yourself enough to act daily, even in small ways, your posture changes. Your decisions change. Your boundaries strengthen. You stop tolerating environments that pull you backward, not because you are aggressive, but because you value your direction. 1% creates momentum, and momentum creates standards. Higher standards quietly remove what does not fit. After this year, I noticed I became more selective. Selective with my time, selective with conversations, selective with commitments, because I understood how valuable consistency is, and I did not want to waste it. If you are listening to this and wondering whether 1% is enough, I will tell you this: it is more than enough. Because the goal is not speed. The goal is identity. If you can become someone who improves slightly every day, you become unstoppable. Not in a loud way, in a steady way, and steady people go far, very far. The year taught me that big change is a collection of small decisions, that discipline is a form of self-respect, that consistency builds trust, And that identity is not discovered, it is constructed, 1% at a time. If you decide to begin, do not wait for Monday. Do not wait for motivation. Do not wait for the perfect plan. Start small, almost embarrassingly small. Read one page, walk 5 minutes, write 3 sentences, speak one honest truth, then repeat tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, because the magic is not in the size of the action. It is in the repetition. 365 days ago, I was waiting for a breakthrough. Today, I understand something deeper. Breakthroughs are built quietly, in ordinary mornings, in boring routines, in invisible effort. If this story resonated with you, I invite you to try your own version of 1%, not to impress anyone, not to compete, but to build trust with yourself. And if you stay consistent long enough, one day you will look back and realize the life you wanted was not created in a single moment. It was created in small daily choices. Thank you for spending this time reflecting with me. If this journey inspired you, stay with this channel. We explore growth slowly, gently, and honestly. And remember, you do not need to change everything. You only need to improve slightly. Today,